Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and honestly, I'm so thrilled you're tuning in today. We're about to embark on, what I think is a really profound exploration, something that touches all of us. I want you to just picture this for a second. Your morning, right after you wake up. For so many of us, maybe even you, before coffee, before anything else really, that hand it instinctively goes for the phone, right, on a nightstand. It's not really a conscious thought anymore, is it? More like a reflex. You find yourself scrolling, maybe liking a few things, watching some short videos, and your feet haven't even hit the floor yet. And this habit, this almost automatic thing we do, it brings us straight to the big, urgent question we're tackling today. In this digital world we live in, are you really in charge of your phone? Or has your phone subtly, maybe even expertly, started controlling you? Today we're peeling back the layers. We're looking at the unwritten rules, these powerful forces, these invisible habits that are shaping our digital lives every single day. Now, our mission here, let's be clear, it's not about demonizing technology. Not at all.
It's about giving you the understanding, the tools to reclaim what's arguably your most valuable resource, your focus, your attention, and ultimately, your sense of control. So get ready. We're aiming for some real insights, some aha moments, and definitely a practical blueprint for taking back the reins.
That's such a crucial place to start because it taps into something so many people feel, that little nagging feeling, but maybe they haven't stopped to really dissect it. We're kind of caught in this strange paradox, aren't we, these devices? They're meant to connect us, but they often leave us feeling, less connected to what's right in front of us, less present, and like you said, less in control. It's this internal tension, and it really hints that there are much bigger, deeper forces at work here.
Exactly. And that internal tension, that's our gateway into what we're calling the digital dawn. We're exploring this new reality and hammering home that central question. So let's dig a bit deeper into this digital reflex, that routine we just talked about. Waking up, immediately grabbing the phone. It's more than just common now. It's genuinely become a conditioned reflex for millions. It barely even registers as a choice anymore. The line between doing something deliberately and just acting automatically, it's really blurry. Just think about your own day. Maybe it starts with that morning scroll, then a quick check at breakfast, definitely during the commute if you have one, and then it just keeps popping up right throughout the whole day. These little moments, these micro interactions, they're not separate things. They weave together. It almost feels like the phone is just an extension of us now. We've normalized it so much, haven't we? We don't even question it. It's just what people do, and that makes it incredibly powerful.
And that raises a really profound point about agency, about control. When something shifts from being a deliberate choice, something you decide to do, to becoming this ingrained reflex, you actually give up a little bit of your personal autonomy. It stops being about deciding, okay, I'm going to check my phone now, and it starts being about responding to this subconscious pull, this learned habit. And the difference isn't just, academic talk. It fundamentally challenges how we see our own free will in this digital space. Are we actually acting on our intentions, or are we mostly just reacting to these patterns that are so deep they operate below our conscious radar, this constant sort of low-level hum of engagement? It can chip away at our feeling of being the main character in our own lives. We start to feel like we're constantly being acted upon rather than being the actor.
And that lands us squarely back at that fundamental question. The real driving force for this deep dive today. In the digital age, are you controlling your phone, or is your phone controlling you? Seems simple on the surface, right? But the implications, they ripple out into everything. Our relationships, how productive we are, our mental health, even how we see ourselves, our identity. Which brings us straight to the mission for today. Our goal is to systematically pull apart these powerful, often invisible forces that are shaping our digital reality. We're going to explore the deep-seated psychology, the cutting-edge neuroscience behind why these apps feel so, addictive sometimes. We're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden business models, the ones that don't just catch our attention, but actually turn it into a commodity. They sell it. And we'll definitely confront the impact, the sometimes subtle, sometimes really profound ways this affects our mental well-being, our sense of self. We're not just skimming the surface today. We're really going behind the scenes, trying to understand the how and the why behind what we feel online, the urges, the frustrations.
We want to understand these invisible habits, these unspoken rules that often guide where we click what we watch. Think of this deep dive as getting a new pair of glasses, basically. A sharper lens to see your own digital interactions more clearly. It's not about judging anyone or condemning the tech. It's about clarity. It's about understanding. And most importantly, it's about empowering you to make informed choices, to take back your incredibly valuable attention.
And that understanding really has to start with the psychology of the scroll itself, that almost involuntary feeling of satisfaction, when you refresh your feed or you hear that little ping of a notification. Like you said, it's absolutely not accidental. It's a meticulously engineered psychological phenomenon, no question. The content that algorithms feed us, whether it's like the endless scroll on TikTok or the perfectly curated images on Instagram or even breaking news alerts, it conditions our brains. It trains us to crave these really quick, unpredictable bursts of information or validation. And this isn't just a vague idea. These platforms are specifically designed, optimized even, to exploit our natural cognitive biases. That's why an hour of watching short, fragmented videos feels so much easier, maybe even more gratifying in the moment than sitting through, say, an hour-long lecture or reading a really dense article. The ease of consumption isn't just a nice side effect. It's the core design principle. It's intentional.
That's where the subtle manipulation really kicks in, isn't it? That little hit of feel-good, that fleeting sense of connection or reward when you see a like or a new comment or even just a juicy headline, it's a carefully crafted response. These apps, they're not just designed to be interesting. They're designed to be, well, irresistible. They tap directly into our very human tendencies for novelty, for social approval, for instant gratification. It's less about the actual content sometimes and more about how it's delivered. These bite-sized pieces, endlessly regenerating loops. Each one is like a tiny, shiny lure for our attention.
Yeah, and a really crucial piece of the puzzle here is understanding the role of dopamine. It gets called the pleasure chemical all the time, but honestly, that's a huge oversimplification. Its function is way more nuanced, and in this context, way more powerful. Dopamine is essentially the brain's primary motivator. It's released not so much when you get the reward itself, but crucially, in anticipation of a potential reward. That anticipation, that's what drives us to seek things out, to explore, to keep going. Think about like in animal hunting. The big dopamine surge isn't necessarily when it finally eats the meal, it's when it spots the prey, when it's tracking it, when it's pursuing it, driven by the promise of that reward. It's this fundamental evolutionary tool, right? Kept us alive, searching for food, exploring our environment. And what's really fascinating, and maybe a bit scary, is how this ancient survival mechanism has been so effectively, hijacked by the digital world.
Hijacked is the right word. And the way they do it is particularly effective and, frankly, addictive. It's through something called intermittent reinforcement. That's the hook. Unlike predictable rewards, where you press a button, you always get the same treat. The unpredictable nature of social media rewards is key. Things like likes, comments, shares, or even just finding a really interesting new post. Because you don't know when the next good thing is coming, it triggers a much stronger, more potent dopamine release. It makes you want to check more. It's exactly like a slot machine, right? If every pull guaranteed a small win, you'd get bored pretty fast. But because you have no idea when the jackpot might hit, or even if it will, you keep pulling that lever. Or in our case, keep refreshing the feed. Keep checking notifications. That unpredictability creates this powerful psychological pull, much stronger than if every interaction was guaranteed to be rewarding. Your brain goes into this high alert seeking mode, always looking for that next unpredictable hit.
Precisely. And that dynamic creates what researchers call an unrelenting dopamine cycle, this constant, unpredictable reinforcement. It drives us to use these platforms for longer and longer periods. It makes it incredibly hard to just put the phone down. It leads to what really feels like a digital binge sometimes. And this isn't just a feeling, it's happening at a neurobiological level. This constant overactivation of the dopamine system, it carries real risks. It definitely increases the likelihood of developing addictive behaviors, but there's more. It can also lead to something called reduced reward sensitivity. Basically, our brains can gradually become less responsive to normal, everyday pleasures. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means our brains might literally start finding simple, real-world joys less rewarding. Things like, a quiet walk outside or the satisfaction of finishing a good book or just having a deep conversation with a friend. They might feel less appealing because they can't compete with the supercharged, instant, unpredictable hits from our devices. The baseline for what feels rewarding gets artificially jacked up.
And we need to stress, this isn't just a metaphor. This isn't just a theory floating around. We have neuroscientific research, really sophisticated studies using fMRI scans, functional magnetic resonance imaging. These studies have shown again and again that using social media activates the exact same regions in the brain that are involved in other addictive behaviors, things like gambling addiction, substance abuse. There are specific studies, for instance, showing heightened activity right in the nucleus accumbens. That's a key part of the brain's reward pathway when people get likes or notifications. That pattern, it's strikingly similar to what scientists observe in people with gambling problems. So the brain isn't just acting like it's addicted, It's using the very same underlying circuitry. That's a really powerful and honestly pretty sobering thought. It really highlights the serious neurochemical impact these platforms can have. And what's even more worrying is the effect on teenagers, on adolescents. Their brains are still developing, especially the parts responsible for impulse control, decision-making, reward processing. That makes them especially susceptible to this conditioning. These digital habits they form now could literally be hardwiring their brains during a really critical developmental window. Maybe you felt it yourself. That deep struggle to just put the phone down, even when you know you should, even when you're not really enjoying it anymore. It's just compulsive. Well, now you have a clearer picture of the powerful, often unseen forces at play. Forces that are literally reshaping your brain's reward system, often against your conscious intentions. It's a constant, quiet battle for your attention. And this intense psychology of the scroll, this dopamine cycle, it inevitably leads us somewhere critical. And frankly, pretty alarming. We're calling it the attention time bomb. Because this relentless digital conditioning, it comes at a huge cost. A cost to our most valuable assets, our time, yes, but also our cognitive health, our ability to think deeply. Let's break this down. Dr. Gloria Mark, her research at the University of California, Irvine, is absolutely groundbreaking here and maybe a little terrifying. She found that the average human attention span, specifically when focused on a digital screen or task, has plummeted. It went from about 2.5 minutes back in 2004 down just 47 seconds in recent years. 47 seconds. Let that sink in for a moment. Less than a minute. Think about what that actually means. Trying to read a news article, properly digest a complex email, even follow a recipe, if your sustained focus barely lasts a minute. Now, you often hear this comparison to a goldfish, right? The whole 9-second attention span thing. Well, that specific goldfish factoid is largely a myth. Seems it came from some misread marketing study years ago. But here's what's not a myth: the dramatic human decline. Even if the goldfish comparison is shaky, the fact that our actual measured attention span on screens dropped significantly, some figures say from around 12 seconds in 2000, others like Dr. Mark's point to that 47-second figure more recently, the trend is undeniable. And the fact we even make that comparison, it speaks volumes about the challenge we're facing. It raises a huge question. How can we possibly engage deeply, think critically, or connect meaningfully with anything if our focus is constantly being shattered into tiny fragments?
What's really important to grasp here is that the shrinking attention span isn't just something passively happening to us. It's a direct, active consequence of how we're interacting with our digital environment all day long. This fragmentation, it's been described really vividly as time confetti. Picture your day, not as solid blocks of focus time, but as thousands of tiny scattered pieces of glitter falling everywhere. Every single notification, an email alert, a text message buzz, a social media pop-up, even just an ad appearing on a web page, it shatters our attention. It forces our brain to do something called context switching every time we jump. Say, from writing a report to quickly checking a Slack message, then back to the report. Our brain doesn't just switch smoothly. No, it actually uses up significant cognitive energy. It has to unload the mental context of the report, load the context of the message, process that, then try to reload the report context again. This constant mental juggling act, which we often tell ourselves is efficient multitasking, is actually incredibly inefficient. It's cognitively draining. It puts a huge tax on our mental resources.
Okay, so let's translate that. What does this mean for us practically, day to day? This relentless juggling, this scattering of our mental energy. It has a steep, measurable price tag. It hits us in several key ways. First, a big hit to productivity. Research from organizations like the American Psychological Association suggests that this kind of task switching can slash your actual productive output by up to 40%. 40%. Think about that. Nearly half your potential. Just gone. Evaporated because you're bouncing between things. Second, it causes massive time loss. Studies have shown it takes, on average, an astonishing 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully get back into deep focus on a demanding task after just one interruption. One text message alert, you check it, and boom, potentially almost half an hour needed to really get back into that deep concentration zone you were in before. And third, the cumulative effect is serious cognitive fatigue. This constant mental effort, the reorienting needed for context switching, it leads to more mistakes, significantly higher stress levels, and just a general inability to sustain concentration. Deep, meaningful work becomes incredibly difficult. So just put that together for a second. Losing almost half your productivity. Needing nearly 25 minutes to refocus after one ding from your phone. Have you ever felt completely wiped out, mentally exhausted, after a day where you thought you were multitasking effectively but your phone was constantly buzzing or lighting up nearby? That feeling, it's not just in your head, that's the science, that's the quantifiable cost of living in this state of perpetual distraction. It's a real physiological drain.
And the overall result of all this constant fragmentation is a state that researchers have termed continuous partial attention. Your mind is sort of always on alert, right? Always scanning the environment, digital or physical, for the next bit of information, the next notification, the next input. It's this kind of diffuse, unfocused state where you never really settle into anything fully. You're never dedicating your complete cognitive firepower to one single thing. For students, this is obviously a huge problem. This constant mental scatter makes it, and I quote, incredibly difficult to engage deeply with academic content. It directly impacts their grades, sure, but more importantly, it affects their long-term retention of knowledge and their ability to develop complex reasoning skills. But honestly, it's not just students. It affects anyone whose work requires deep thought, critical analysis, sustained problem solving, or any kind of creative flow. It undermines our capacity for deep reflection, for nuanced understanding, for innovative thinking. Basically, all the cognitive skills that are becoming more important, not less, in our complex world.
And, the impact of these digital forces, it doesn't stop at just wrecking our attention spans. It goes deeper. Much deeper. It reaches right into our sense of self. It influences what we believe, how we see the world, and maybe even who we fundamentally become. Which brings us to section 4, the great algorithm shaping beliefs and identity. We need to understand that social media isn't just a tool for connecting with friends. It's also, quite profoundly, a powerful engine for social conditioning. Think about it. From the moment we're born, into any culture, we're surrounded by these invisible threads, unspoken rules, cultural norms, shared values. These threads subtly teach us how to behave, what to strive for, what's considered normal or desirable. They shape our identity long before we ever create our first online profile.
Yeah, and if we connect that to the bigger picture today, social media algorithms are essentially a modern, supercharged, and incredibly personalized version of that age-old social conditioning process. We often like to think, don't we, that our beliefs, our identity, they're purely the result of our own free thought, our individual choices. But the reality is a huge chunk of our sense of self, our values, our worldview. It's almost, to use a potent metaphor, installed like software by our environment, our family, our schools, our culture. And now these algorithms have become a massive, often completely unchallenged part of that environment. They learn from everything we do online, what we click, watch, like, share, comment on. And then they relentlessly feed us more of the same, subtly, constantly reinforcing our existing biases, shaping how we see the world, even telling us what information is important or trustworthy.
Right. And this is where it gets really powerful and honestly a bit unsettling. These algorithms, they aren't designed to give us a balanced view or expose us to diverse perspectives. Not usually. They're designed for one main thing: maximizing engagement, keeping us glued to the screen. And they do that by showing us stuff that confirms what we already think or what we've shown interest in before. This creates these deeply personalized echo chambers or filter bubbles. So instead of seeing a wide range of views, we end up swimming in this highly curated, self-reinforcing version of reality, a version that just echoes back our own beliefs and biases. The implications of that are huge. It's bad for critical thinking, obviously. It makes it harder to understand people who think differently. It contributes massively to societal polarization. We think we're looking out at the world, but often we're just staring into a highly polished, algorithmically generated mirror reflecting our own views back at us. In fact, it's worse than just reinforcing. Research actually suggests that algorithms can accelerate how polarized our beliefs become, maybe even 4 times faster than traditional media used to. It doesn't just create different views. It can breed real misunderstanding, even contempt for the other side.
And this digital echo chamber effect, when you combine it with the constant pressure to perform online, to present this perfect curated version of yourself, it can lead to a really deep kind of exhaustion, something called misalignment burnout. This isn't just feeling tired, it's this profound emotional and psychological weariness that happens when your inner life, your genuine values, your real aspirations, who you truly are, becomes totally disconnected from the persona you project, especially online. You might look successful on the outside, right? Ticking all the boxes according to the digital script. But inside, you feel this gnawing emptiness, this anxiety, this lack of purpose, because you're living by these unspoken rules, these external expectations that you never actually chose for yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, wearing a mask for so long, you kind of forget what your own face looks like underneath.
And that internal split, that misalignment, it's just tragically amplified by what we've called the illusion of perfection. This relentless pressure to broadcast a perfect life online. We know intellectually, right? We all know those feeds are highlight reels. They're filtered, they're staged, sometimes they're completely fake. But our brains, maybe the more primitive parts, they still react as if it's real, as if these impossible standards are achievable and maybe even normal. So we're constantly, subtly comparing our own messy, complicated real lives to everyone else's curated digital perfection. And that just fuels these intense feelings of inadequacy. Imposter syndrome kicks in, it chips away at self-worth, leads to chronic self-doubt. It becomes this vicious cycle, doesn't it? The more you scroll through these perfect highlights, the more your own life starts to feel, well, not enough. And that triggers anxiety, maybe depression, which then ironically might drive you back to the very platforms that are making you feel bad in the first place. Think about it. Those moments when you're scrolling, maybe you felt fine just a second before, and then suddenly you get that little pang.
That feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough, or my life isn't as exciting as theirs. It's such a common experience now, almost universal in the digital age. And now you understand the mechanics behind why it's so powerful and potentially so damaging. It's this quiet daily assault on our self-esteem. Okay, so if our attention is being sliced and diced, if our beliefs are being subtly shaped, if our well-being is taking a hit, the obvious next question is, well, who benefits? Cui bono? Who's actually profiting from all this scrolling, all this comparison, this potential burnout? This brings us right to section 5. The hidden business model to be troubling as a commodity. Let's just state it plainly. Social media isn't free. Not really. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Let's unpack that. Most of these big platforms, they run on what's called an asymmetric business model. What that means is you, the user, you're not actually their primary customer. Instead, they offer you these free services, connection, entertainment, information, in exchange for something way more valuable to them. And that's your data. They meticulously collect vast amounts of information about your behavior, your preferences, your interactions, your demographics, literally every tap, every scroll, how long you pause on a video, who your friends are, everything. This incredibly rich, granular data, it gets analyzed, packaged up, and then sold. Sold on a huge attention-based marketplace to advertisers, to marketers, to anyone who wants to capture your focus and influence your decisions. Just to put a number on it, think about Google's parent company, Alphabet. Back in 2021, something like 81% of their massive revenue, over $209 billion, came directly from advertising. From Google search ads, YouTube ads. It's not just about getting you to click anymore. It's about the deep insights they gain from every single second you spend looking at their screens. Every piece of data you generate. That's why the services seem free. You're paying all right. You're paying with your attention, with your data, and ultimately with your time.
What's truly remarkable here, historically speaking, is how this fundamental shift in information availability just completely flipped the economic script. It made our focus, our attention, the single most valuable commodity. This whole model really rests on an economic principle that the Nobel laureate Herbert A. Simon pointed out decades ago. He basically said, look, when information becomes overwhelmingly abundant, and boy, are we living in an age of information overload, something else inevitably becomes scarce and critical. That scarce resource, it's human attention. So these modern companies, these attention merchants, as they've been called, they're not just offering cool apps. They are locked in this incredibly fierce global competition, a competition to capture and then monetize this incredibly scarce resource, your attention. Their entire business model, their sky-high valuations, their very existence, it all depends on getting and holding your focus for as long as humanly possible. They are, essentially, the new prospectors, mining for attention in the digital gold rush. And your attention, that's the gold.
And how do these attention merchants actually get and keep that gold? Well, they use incredibly sophisticated methods. Often, they deploy what psychologists call supernormal stimuli. These are basically artificial, exaggerated versions of things that our brains are naturally drawn to. They're designed to trigger a much stronger, more intense response than the natural things our instincts originally evolved for. Think about it. Social media apps. They're perfect examples. The constant stream of novelty, the bright colors, the flashing notification badges, that instant gratification of a like, the manufactured sense of urgency, the endless newness. They are intentionally designed to be hyper-rewarding, to hijack those ancient dopamine pathways we talked about, to be incredibly difficult to just ignore or put down. They tap into our deep-seated urges for social connection, for status, for information, but in ways that real-world natural experiences often just can't compete with. It's like an arms race, constantly escalating to capture our brain's attention.
Yeah, and this whole new economic reality built on attention, it's also organically spawned an entirely new kind of profession, hasn't it? The influencer. You look at figures like, say, Mr. Beast. He's built this absolutely colossal empire, not by selling a traditional product initially, but by becoming a master of capturing and holding mass attention. Their strategies are super multifaceted, really finely tuned. They create content that's compelling, often high stakes, that practically begs for engagement. They diversify how they make money, sponsorships, merchandise, and they even use things like philanthropy strategically to build enormous brand loyalty and a sense of community around them. And the marketing that comes through influencers often feels more authentic, right? More trustworthy than a traditional ad because it feels like it's based on a personal connection. It just vividly shows how in today's digital economy, attention is completely intertwined with social capital. If you can command attention, you wield significant power, influence, and yeah, you can make a lot of money.
So let's step back for a second. What does this all really mean? From a purely business standpoint, your attention isn't just valuable, it's literally gold, digital gold. And there are entire multi-billion-dollar industries meticulously engineered around one single goal: getting it, and more importantly, keeping it. Every single feature on an app, every little notification sound, every tiny tweak to the algorithm, it's all painstakingly designed with that one goal in mind. Maximize your engagement. Keep your eyes on the screen. Because that's the pipeline. That's how they generate their immense profits. It's this constant, highly sophisticated, often totally invisible battle being waged for your most precious and definitely finite resource, your focus.
And this relentless war for our attention, combined with the curated, often unreal realities we're swimming in online, it takes a toll, a profound, often devastating toll, especially on our mental health, the fallout, the mental health consequences of living this hyper-connected, comparison-heavy digital life. It's an unfortunately really alarmingly well documented now. Study after study shows it. Research consistently links heavy use of social media to a whole spectrum of negative psychological outcomes. Increased rates of anxiety, definitely. Heightened feelings of depression. And paradoxically, a deep sense of loneliness, even when you're supposedly connected to hundreds or thousands of people. And this raises a really important point. It's probably not the technology itself that's inherently evil, right? It's the psychological mechanisms it amplifies, the ones it exploits. These are mechanisms like our need for social validation, our tendency to compare that have always been part of human psychology. But these platforms, they essentially weaponize those vulnerabilities for engagement.
It's such a strange psychological bind, isn't it? Logically, intellectually, we know. We know those perfect Instagram feeds aren't real life. We know they're curated, filtered, maybe even totally staged. But even knowing that, our brains, maybe on a more gut level, they still react as if they are real, as if those are genuine standards we should be measuring ourselves against. So this constant, inescapable exposure to feeds full of perfect lives, perfect bodies, amazing vacations, flawless careers, it creates these wildly unrealistic false standards. And that inevitably leads to feeling inadequate, that pervasive sense of, I'm not good enough. It just grinds down self-esteem. And this whole dynamic is particularly damaging, really insidious, for teenagers and young adults. Their brains are still developing. They're naturally much more sensitive to social pressures, to that intense need for validation and belonging that social media just hooks right into. Their sense of self is still being formed. It's malleable, and it can get fundamentally warped, really damaged by constantly comparing themselves to these idealized, often artificial, unattainable digital benchmarks. It can be truly detrimental to healthy development.
And what the research clearly shows is this really troubling bidirectional relationship between social media use and mental health struggles. It's key to understanding the vicious cycle. So someone who's already feeling anxious or depressed or lonely, they might initially turn to social media, right? Looking for an escape, maybe a coping mechanism, maybe just a distraction or a way to feel connected. But then, ironically, the very act of being on there, the constant social comparison, the pressure to perform for likes, navigating the often toxic interactions can actually make their original problems much worse. Instead of easing the loneliness or anxiety, it often amplifies feelings of inadequacy, isolation, maybe even self-loathing. And that traps them in this horrible feedback loop. They use social media hoping to feel better, but it makes them feel worse, which then pushes them to seek more of the very thing that's harming them. It just spirals downwards into what can genuinely feel like a digital abyss.
Exactly. Maybe you felt that yourself. You're feeling a bit down, maybe bored and lonely, so you pick up your phone and start scrolling, hoping for a little lift, a distraction. But then, after 20 minutes or an hour, you put it down and you actually feel worse than before. More isolated, more inadequate, just kind of diminished.
that insidious cycle. That's precisely what the research describes. It's this powerful, self-reinforcing loop, and it can be incredibly hard to break free from unless you really understand the psychological and algorithmic mechanics driving it. It's a real profound digital abyss for so many people, just quietly eroding well-being one scroll at a time. Okay, but here's the crucial turn. Here's the empowering part. This deep dive, it's not just about highlighting all the problems. It's fundamentally about arming you with solutions, with actionable strategies. It's about charting a course toward reclaiming your future, a blueprint for intentional living. Let's be really clear. Social media, the internet, technology, it isn't inherently evil. It has incredible potential, right? It can inspire us, connect us across huge distances, help us learn, even create entirely new careers and opportunities. The key, the absolute game changer, is making a deliberate, conscious shift, moving away from being just a passive consumer, someone who just reacts to whatever the algorithm throws at them, towards becoming someone who exercises active, intentional control over their digital life. Honestly, this is like the new financial literacy for the 21st century, learning how to manage, how to invest your attention. Because it is the most valuable, finite currency you have. It's about grabbing back the steering wheel of your own mind.
Absolutely. And that journey, the journey to reclaiming your focus, your sense of agency, and ultimately your mental well-being, it really starts with that deep, sustained awareness of all these powerful mechanisms we've been talking about today. But just being aware, that's not quite enough, is it? Awareness has to be paired with deliberate action, with building science-backed habits, with making intentional choices day in, day out. This isn't about some magical overnight transformation. It's more about committing to a series of small, conscious decisions that, when you add them up over time, will fundamentally rewire and redefine your relationship with technology. It's about deliberately building a digital environment that serves you instead of the other way around.
All right, so let's get practical. Subsection A, consciously unplug and reclaim your boredom. The absolute first step, the bedrock, is getting genuinely self-aware. Recognizing concretely when you're being driven by the tech versus driving it yourself. And this means more than just having a vague feeling. It means actually auditing your attention. Where does your precious time and focus really go? There are apps that can help you track this, digital well-being tools, or you can even just use a simple pen and paper for a few days. Just note down, you pick up your phone, why, and for how long. Once you have that clear picture, that undeniable awareness, the next vital step is to start creating some real, robust digital boundaries. This could look like lots of different things. Maybe something simple, like committing to leaving your phone in another room overnight, guaranteeing undisturbed sleep, or setting specific no-phone zones or times like during meals, or the first hour of your day, or when you're spending quality time with family. Or maybe you go for something more intensive, like a full digital detox weekend, or even a structured 30-day reset from certain apps. The main goal behind all these boundaries, it's to intentionally give your brain a break, to recalibrate that hijacked reward system, making you more sensitive again to the simple, natural pleasures of the real world.
And something that's profoundly important here, maybe counterintuitive in our busy world, is the idea of relearning, even embracing the lost art of boredom. We live in this hyper-stimulated culture where we've almost developed a fear of empty moments, haven't we? That slightest pause, and we instinctively reach for the phone to fill the void. But actually allowing your mind to just wander, to rest, without a constant IV drip of external stimulation, it's absolutely crucial. Crucial for your cognitive health, for emotional processing, for creativity. Boredom, in this sense, it's not just emptiness. It's actually an essential incubation period. It's in those quiet moments when you're doing nothing that your brain gets to work in the background. It processes information, consolidates memories, engages in that kind of diffuse thinking that's vital for solving tricky problems. And often that's where genuine creativity sparks. New ideas pop up. You gain real emotional insight. It's where deep thinking, real self-reflection, and true innovation actually have space to breathe, away from all the digital noise.
Okay, building on that foundation of awareness and boundaries, let's move to subsection B. Practice deep work and habit replacement. To really fight back against that time confetti, we talked about that constant shattering of our focus. One of the most powerful strategies you can adopt is the practice of deep work. This idea basically involves intentionally setting aside significant, uninterrupted blocks of time, specifically for your most cognitively demanding, high-value tasks. It's about creating, and then fiercely protecting, an environment where you can truly immerse yourself in something challenging without the constant barrage of digital distractions. It allows for that deep concentration needed for breakthroughs and quality output.
And practically, how do you actually do deep work? It means putting specific methods into action. The first, maybe the most critical step, is ruthlessly turning off all non-essential notifications. Seriously. Every single ping, buzz, or banner, at least during your designated focus blocks. You can use established techniques to help structure this, like the Pomodoro technique. You work in focus bursts, maybe 25 minutes, then take a short break. It helps train your attention muscle. Another key part is actively draining the shallows. That means systematically identifying and then minimizing or eliminating all those low-impact, shallow tasks and digital check-ins that constantly nibble away at your time and mental energy, preventing you from ever really sinking into deep focus. This whole approach, it's not really about working harder. It's about working smarter, deeper, and more meaningfully. It's about consciously protecting your most valuable cognitive asset, your focused attention. Think of it as a strategic investment in your own mental energy.
Right. So if we boil that down, what does it mean for your daily schedule? It means being intentional. It means strategically carving out protected time slots for your most important thinking. It means being incredibly deliberate about giving those high-value tasks the sustained, uninterrupted focus they actually need to be done well, instead of letting your attention get scattered like digital dust across countless browser tabs, emails, and minor pings. It's a conscious choice. It's an act of will, really, designed to optimize your thinking, enhance the quality of your work, and probably reduce your stress levels too.
Now, ultimately, maybe the most sustainable, the most deeply rewarding solution for building long-term digital well-being, as the research really suggests, is this: replacing those reactive, often unconscious digital habits with actions that are intentional and driven by your own values. But that requires some real, honest self-awareness. It means taking the time, maybe even dedicated time, to genuinely figure out what your core values are, what truly matters to you, what defines a meaningful, fulfilling life for you personally, not based on what you see online, but based on your own inner compass. And then using those identified values as your guide, as your decision-making filter for how you choose to spend your precious attention and time, both online and off. When you have that internal clarity, that sense of personal purpose, it becomes so much easier to resist the powerful subconscious pull of the algorithms and the endless scroll, because you're navigating by your own map, not just following theirs.
And a really powerful way to reinforce that, to live those values, is to make a fundamental shift in how you engage with the digital world. Actively choose to be more of a creator and less of just a consumer. This isn't just a small tweak, it could be a profound identity shift. And creator doesn't have to mean becoming a YouTube star. Even small acts of creation can make a huge difference. Things like maybe committing to learning a new skill, something tangible, or consistently keeping a journal, exploring your thoughts, engaging in a creative hobby, painting, writing, playing music, coding, gardening, even cooking something complex from scratch, anything where you're actively making or doing something. These acts start to fundamentally retrain your brain. They teach it to find deep, lasting satisfaction in purpose, in skill building, in tangible accomplishment, in self-expression, which is a very different kind of reward than the fleeting, passive, hyper-stimulated gratification you get from just consuming digital content. When you create, you're engaging your mind differently. You're problem-solving. You're expressing something unique about yourself. You're building something real, even if it's just for you.
And that provides a much deeper, more sustainable, and just inherently more meaningful sense of reward and fulfillment than passively scrolling through stuff designed by someone else. So maybe think about this. What stands out to you here? What's one small creative act, maybe something you used to enjoy or something new you're curious about? What's one small thing you could realistically add to your week that might bring that different, more profound kind of satisfaction? It could honestly be the most powerful step you take. #tag outro. And yeah, wow, there you have it. What an incredibly illuminating and I really, really hope empowering journey we've taken together today. Just to quickly recap the core message, we've seen how our digital world has created this environment where our attention, our most precious mental resource, is constantly under siege. We've learned it's not just innocent fun and games, there's a powerful, meticulously engineered, profit-driven system working behind the scenes, using sophisticated neuroscience to keep us hooked, scrolling, comparing. The choice we face ultimately isn't really whether we use these technologies or not. For most of us, they're part of modern life.
The real choice, the truly transformative one, is about who is in control. Is it you, or is it the algorithms?
Exactly, and the future, you could argue, it really belongs to those people who have the courage to stop and ask themselves those critical, maybe uncomfortable, personal questions. Who am I, really, authentically, when I step away from the screens? And in any given moment, is the specific way I'm spending my attention right now the absolute best, most meaningful choice I can make? They aren't easy questions for sure, but confronting them is absolutely essential if we want to reclaim our personal agency and consciously steer the course of our own lives.
So well said. And just remember this, the strongest person in this new digital landscape, it's not the one with the most followers or the most likes or the most viral posts. The truly strong person is the one who consciously, intentionally chooses where their invaluable attention goes. By understanding the science, understanding the subtle forces we've explored today, and by actively taking back control with deliberate, intentional habits, you absolutely can choose. You can choose to be a creator of your own experience, not just a product passively consumed by the system. You can choose to build a life that isn't just busy, but is deeply meaningful, genuinely fulfilling, and authentically focused on what truly matters most to you. Thank you so much for joining us today on this deep dive into the unwritten rules and the unseen forces shaping our digital age. We genuinely hope you take these insights, let them sink in, reflect on them, and maybe begin your own powerful journey of reclaiming your focus, your time, and your well-being. Until next time, please stay curious, stay intentional, and keep digging deep. Goodbye for now.